Today, we're introducing the romantic horror film My Girlfriend Can See Ghosts. Starring Sun Ye-jin, the male lead. Ma Jo-goo is a street magician who entertains passers-by with simple props and a partner on the street corner. One night, while performing, he notices a somber-looking woman in the crowd. While others clap and cheer, she stands there expressionless. Intrigued by this mysterious woman, Jo-goo decides to follow her. Watching from a distance, Jo-goo sees the woman, cloaked in black, like a ghost emerging from a wardrobe. An idea instantly sparks in his mind. Make her his partner. Her unique aura would be perfect for a horror magic show, guaranteed to be a hit. So, Jo-goo gathers his courage and approaches the woman, convincing her named Yori to join his magic team. Their debut show takes the audience by storm. Jo-goo, as a psychic, summons the ghost of a murder victim, who points out their killer in the audience before exacting revenge. Jo-goo then saves the human culprit, with the cleverly crafted act leaving everyone in awe. Jo-goo's horror magic show becomes an overnight sensation, yet his partner Kang Yori remains an enigma. Over the past year, she has never attended post-performance gatherings, always leaving with the excuse of having plans. But when Yori returns home, she has no friends or dates. Even on her birthday, she spends it alone. Her mother and sister, who live abroad, feel guilty about this. Every time they call, her mother tearfully apologizes to Yori. The reason for her isolation and the family's reluctance to stay nearby is that Yori can see ghosts. These spirits frequently seek her help. For instance, a ghost of a hit-and-run victim asks Yori to relay the license plate number to the police, leading to the capture of the perpetrator and the settling of old scores. After the show that day, Jo-goo once again invited Yori to join the team for a post-performance dinner. As usual, she came up with various excuses to decline. However, Jo-goo insisted, saying the only acceptable excuse for not coming would be the death of one's parents. With her co-workers urging her on, Yori reluctantly agreed. During the dinner at the pub, a colleague shared a story about a dream they had the night before, in which their deceased grandmother hit them with a cane. Everyone found the story amusing, but Yori, having drunk a lot of beer, burst into laughter, slumping over the table. Her reaction puzzled the others. Yori looked up and asked the colleague if it hurt when she hit them. When the colleague nodded, Yori said with a smile, "That wasn't a dream." She explained that when people die, they sometimes come in while you sleep, staring at you with wide eyes or even grabbing your throat. Most people think these are nightmares, but they don't realize it's real. After that, a drunken Yori sat next to Jo-goo and began to ramble, pouring out everything she usually kept to herself. Mocking and teasing Jo-goo relentlessly, she even went so far as to grab him, ignoring Jo-goo's awkwardness, and ripped open his shirt to expose his chest. The rest of the team froze in shock. Unfazed, Yori simply bid everyone goodnight and left the table to go home. Looking at Jo-goo sitting there awkwardly, his colleagues fell silent. The morning after, Yori felt so embarrassed about what happened the night before that she could have died of shame. Meanwhile, Jo-goo was driving his girlfriend to the airport and complained about Yori calling him a pig's head, drinking 30 bottles of beer alone, and ripping his own shirt. After dropping his girlfriend off at the airport, Jo-goo received a call from Yori, who kept apologizing for the previous night and offered to deduct the cost of the shirt from her salary. As Jo-goo lectured her over the phone, Yori suddenly felt the familiar sensation she had when seeing ghosts. This time, the feeling came from a painting on the wall that was making strange noises. When Yori moved closer to stare at it, a picture frame behind her fell to the ground. She turned to look but didn't pay much attention. However, when she turned back, a ghostly woman emerged from the painting, and Yori blurted out, "Ju-yi." Jo-goo heard the scream through the phone and, worried about Yori, went to her house. The two sat in awkward silence for a while, with no suitable topic to break the ice. After a few uncomfortable moments, Jo-goo decided to leave, but as he was leaving, he noticed a boy in the courtyard, unaware that it was actually a ghost seeking out Yori. Yori claimed it was the neighbor's kid, but the boy vanished in an instant. Soon after, Jo-goo heard noises coming from inside Yori's house and assumed it was the boy playing hide and seek. Curious, he ignored Yori's attempts to stop him and hid near the cupboard where the sound was coming from, planning to give the boy a scare. When the boy began sneaking out of the cupboard, Jo-goo suddenly stuck his head out to frighten him, causing the boy to flee quickly. Jo-goo was surprised by how fast the boy ran. Later that night, the ghost boy showed up at Jo-goo's house. Jo-goo, who had been sleeping, was quickly awakened by the noise. He saw the boy smiling innocently at him before charging forward. Jo-goo screamed and shielded himself with his arms, but after a moment, he realized nothing had happened. He got out of bed and cautiously looked around the room, only to spot the boy outside the window, which terrified him so much he ran out of the house. Yori, asleep, was awakened by a call from Jo-goo, who recounted his ordeal. She rushed to find him and poured him a glass of alcohol to help him calm down. After Jo-goo finished drinking, Yori leaned in and whispered in his ear, revealing that the boy was indeed a ghost. The two of them rushed to Jo-goo's house, but after searching every corner, they couldn't find the boy. This puzzled Yori because once a ghost finds its way to a place, it doesn't leave easily. Before long, she discovered that the mischievous boy had been clinging tightly to Jo-goo's back the whole time. Yori touched the ghost boy's hand and understood his intention, so they followed him to a secluded road. There, they found a car that had overturned in an accident, with an unconscious man barely clinging to life in the driver's seat. When the man saw Yori and Jo-goo, he immediately begged them to save his son. Jo-goo turned to the back seat and saw the ghostly boy. Early the next morning, rescue workers arrived and took the injured man to the hospital. The ghost boy bowed to Yori and Jo-goo to express his gratitude. To satisfy Jo-goo's curiosity, Yori decided to tell him how she gained her ability to see ghosts. She explained that in high school, she was in an accident and nearly died. Because there were so many injured people, the paramedics randomly chose Yori to treat first, leaving her best friend Joo-hee to wait. It was during this brief period that Joo-hee passed away. Shortly after the incident, the spirits of the deceased began to visit Yori. Her classmates, knowing she could see ghosts, avoided her. Eventually, even her mother and sister became afraid and emigrated abroad. Yori realized that the problem stemmed from Joo-hee, who deliberately appeared to frighten her loved ones. Joo-hee blamed her, wanting her to live like a ghost. Jo-goo asked why the paramedics chose to save her first. Yori said the paramedic claimed she was glowing, though he never explained what he meant by that. Years of suppression and loneliness made Yori more independent. She never met her friends in person, relying solely on phone calls for communication. Back home, Yori talked with her best friend about her recent experiences with her colleague Jo-goo. Her friend told her that it sounded like dating and that she shouldn't worry about whether Jo-goo had a girlfriend, it didn't matter. Yori then reached out to a screenwriter friend, a romantic comedy specialist, and arranged a three-way call to get advice and guidance. The next day, Jo-goo was talking to a colleague on the street about the ghost-seeing psychic Yori when he noticed her sitting in a cafe with a man. It turned out Yori's mother had signed her up for a matchmaking service, and she was on a blind date. Feeling awkward and unsure of how to handle the situation, Yori spotted Jo-goo outside the window and rushed out to tell him what was going on. She didn't like the guy and had no idea what to do. Jo-goo promised to help her out and went inside to meet the date. Yori watched from outside as Jo-goo showed the man something on his phone before coming out. Yori immediately asked Jo-goo what excuse he used. Jo-goo explained that he showed the guy a photo of a comrade from his military service days and told him that Yori was transgender. Later, the two of them went to a nearby restaurant to eat, where Jo-goo started talking about his friends, hoping to find a suitable match for Yori. She didn't have high expectations, only wanting someone brave. Jo-goo mentioned a friend, Ki-woo, who was a retired Marine. He arranged for Yori to meet Ki-woo for a date. However, when Jo-goo saw the two of them hitting it off, he felt a twinge of discomfort and began to undermine his friend. But Yori found Ki-woo amusing despite his tall tales, and she couldn't help but laugh uncontrollably. Jo-goo was thoroughly unhappy about this and insisted they leave the restaurant for another place. What was meant to be a setup for a friend turned into Jo-goo constantly disrupting the date. Yet, seeing Yori's hearty laughter made Jo-goo smile despite himself. As the date neared its end, Ki-woo confessed his feelings to Yori, saying he didn't care that she could see ghosts. Just then, he got a call asking him to move his car. While Ki-woo went downstairs, Jo-goo continued to criticize his friend, but noticed Yori remained unfazed. Meanwhile, as Ki-woo took the elevator down, it suddenly malfunctioned and stopped. When he forcefully pressed the open button, the elevator doors creaked open to reveal a strange, airy space. Inside, Joo-hee's ghost floated, and he quickly slammed the elevator door shut. Not long after, more problems arose. The elevator lights flickered, and ghostly apparitions appeared inside. The doors opened again, and a female ghost grabbed Ki-woo as the elevator plummeted downward with his screams echoing. After waiting a long time at the restaurant without seeing Ki-woo return, Yori sensed something was wrong and hurried to the underground parking lot. There, she found Ki-woo vomiting and looking terrified. When he saw Yori, he was so frightened that he wouldn't let her come near him, realizing that he couldn't be with a girlfriend who sees ghosts. Heartbroken, Yori turned to her usual way of venting her frustrations, playing baseball, her go-to sport for relieving stress. After feeling better, she invited Jo-goo to join her for a game. At first, Jo-goo made all sorts of excuses, but eventually, he couldn't resist and agreed to play. It was only then that Yori understood why he initially refused. Jo-goo had no idea how to play baseball and missed almost every ball. Yori's sadness vanished as she laughed at Jo-goo's clumsiness. Later, back home, she had another three-way call with her friends to talk about what had happened that evening. Her screenwriter friend speculated that at this rate, there might be a kiss on her next date. Since Yori had never been in a relationship before, her screenwriter friend and her best friend began to give her all kinds of advice. The next day, Jo-goo invited Yori out for drinks, and after downing several bottles of soju, chaos ensued once more. Yori ended up ripping Jo-goo's shirt again, but this time, he was prepared with a spare. After leaving the bar, the two drunkenly returned to Jo-goo's home. In the middle of the night, Jo-goo felt water dripping on his face. When he opened his eyes, he saw Joo-hee's ghost hovering above him. Just then, a hand covered his eyes. Yori reassured him, saying, "It's okay, hang in there." Once Joo-hee left, they went to the courtyard. Seeing Jo-goo's hands still shaking, Yori stood in front of him and began teaching him how to overcome his fear. She pulled all sorts of funny faces and tricks to cheer him up. Jo-goo understood her intentions, and they embraced quietly, comforting each other. That night, they decided to sleep in a tent, but Jo-goo's girlfriend, Sunwoo, who had just returned from abroad, caught them. Sunwoo assured Yori that she wasn't angry, saying, "Even if he falls in love with you, I won't be mad because I've heard about what you've been through. Only a man beyond ordinary can be right for you." Back home, Yori called her friends to discuss Sunwoo's words. Feeling that Sunwoo pitied her, her friends comforted her, making her feel even more upset about not being able to see her family and friends, not being able to date, and facing a life of loneliness while pretending to be strong in front of others. Meanwhile, at Jo-goo's home, Sunwoo could see that Jo-goo had fallen for Yori. They parted ways amicably, with Sunwoo encouraging him, saying, "You need to be braver if you want to be with Yori." The next day, Yori did not show up for the magic show. She had already resigned, worried that Yori was at home upset. Her best friend and screenwriter friend, whom she hadn't seen in years, came to visit her. While they were chatting, Yori received a call from Jo-goo, who directly expressed that he missed her and wanted to meet. As Yori waited for Jo-goo on the street where they first met, she encountered the terrifying ghost Joo-hee, who began to harass her even more. Even in front of ordinary people, Yori could only remain still, letting the ghost manipulate her. Just then, Jo-goo appeared. Having overcome his fear of ghosts, his presence made Joo-hee back off for a moment, and their first official date began. Yori warned him that being with her meant buying multiple high-coverage insurance policies and that he could leave if it became too much to handle. Jo-goo agreed, and back at Yori's house, they attempted various kissing techniques her friends had taught her. The next morning, Jo-goo had just gotten into a taxi and was leaving Yori's neighborhood when he got into an accident. After Jo-goo left, Yori was tidying up and found an old metal box. Inside, she discovered a necklace, and as she examined the mysterious pendant, something clicked in her mind. Meanwhile, Jo-goo crawled out of the wrecked car unharmed. When he went to check the forklift that hit him, he found it was driverless. As he stood there in shock, the sign on a nearby building began to shake but fortunately missed him when it fell. He realized that these incidents might be warnings. Upon hearing about all this, Yori rushed to the theater. She relaxed only after seeing Jo-goo on stage performing. However, during the magic show, something went wrong. The actor playing the vengeful ghost was supposed to point to the actor playing the murderer, but she pointed at Yori in the audience and floated toward her. The cloak covered Yori and pulled her into a cabinet on stage. At this point, the crew sensed something was wrong. Jo-goo forcefully opened the cabinet door, finding Yori trapped in water, separated from him by glass. As he attempted to break the glass with an axe, Jo-goo was suddenly lifted into the air by an unseen force, and when it vanished, he fell hard to the ground. Yori watched Jo-goo collapse and began pounding on the glass frantically. Suddenly, the cabinet door shut again. In this watery world, Yori saw the ghost of Joo-hee. who was holding a necklace. It was a guardian angel necklace that Joo-hee's grandmother had given her. During a school trip, Yori had admired the necklace and begged Joo-hee to let her try it on. Joo-hee agreed to let Yori wear it for a photo but wanted it back afterward. Unfortunately, at that moment, a bus full of students crashed through the highway railing and plunged into the floodwaters below. After the accident, both Yori and Joo-hee were rescued but were unconscious. A rescuer saw the glowing necklace around Yori's neck and chose to perform CPR on her first. Joo-hee died in the meantime, and she resented Yori for it. In the watery realm, Yori placed the necklace around Joo-hee's neck. Immediately, the cabinet doors burst open, and water flooded out, sending Yori tumbling onto the stage. When she woke up, she was in the hospital. Jo-goo wasn't so lucky, though the doctor said he was physically unharmed. He remained unconscious. A co-worker advised Yori to leave Korea and reunite with her family abroad. That night, as Yori packed her bags, she called her family to tell them she would only be staying briefly and wouldn't live with them permanently. Meanwhile, Jo-goo finally woke up. When he heard from a colleague that Yori was leaving, he rushed to the airport to find her. Despite reaching Yori before her flight, she insisted on breaking up, saying she wouldn't return to Korea once she left. After clearing security, Yori received another call from Jo-goo. Without resorting to flowery words, he expressed his concern for Yori, especially after their near-death experiences. The thought of her spending her life haunted and lonely broke his heart. He wished he could shoulder all her burdens, but Yori hung up and boarded the plane to leave Korea. Once the plane reached cruising altitude, the flight attendants began serving the passengers. When one attendant approached a long-haired girl, she asked several times what she'd like to drink but got no response. The girl was Joo-hee's ghost. When the flight attendant looked into her eyes and saw their terrifying expression, she asked, "Are you feeling unwell?" Under Joo-hee's influence, the entire plane began to shudder violently. Back at the airport, Jo-goo heard an announcement that due to severe weather, the plane would return. In the end, Yori stayed behind, though she continued to see ghosts. At least Joo-hee had forgiven her. She was no longer lonely, as a co-worker had taken a liking to her and constantly professed his feelings to her. The movie ends here. If you enjoyed this recap, please like and follow. Thank you, everyone.